Hello dear crypto friends, and welcome to today's video in which we are going to try to find out if this was already the bottom for the crypto market in general, for Bitcoin, for XRP. So is this dump over or are we going lower? Let's try to find this out. Now looking at XRP at the long-term chart, we can see that actually XRP has held the support line. If I connect the lows of XRP in the last 2 years since the COVID low, right, I get a really nice triangle. And lo and behold, this triangle ends in early January 2023. That is quite fascinating, right? And last time I said that this whole structure here looks remarkably similar to Bitcoin, what Bitcoin did from 2018 to 2020, right? We identified this whole structure here with this here. So we had a similar triangle type of situation in Bitcoin, right? And then we got the famous COVID crash, and then it rebounded and immediately went into a rally. And we can identify this peak here, of course, with this one here, and this bear market here with this bear market. So we see it's a similar type of situation. If I draw in the Fibonacci retracements, we can see that the Fibonacci retracements also fit quite nicely, because here with XRP it went almost to the 0.618, and here in Bitcoin it also went to the 618 Fibonacci retracement level. So we can see that this whole structure here looks remarkably similar. And of course, I said in the last video that we could go lower if we compare this with this situation here. Bitcoin almost reached the low of December 2018, right? It went to 3,900 and the low was in December 18 at 3,100. If this thing was to repeat, we could indeed go as low as 15 cents. I would say 15 cents. Then we would get a rebound, and then immediately we would strangely go into a rally. Believe it or not, bizarre, but that is what would happen if XRP was to repeat the pattern of what Bitcoin did in 2020, right? Now looking at the weekly RSI, right? If we watch the weekly RSI, we can see that the weekly RSI is actually now at historic lows and actually has made a new historic low. We had in XRP RSI values that were as low as 32 before, once in November 2015, here during this low, and again once in March 2020 during the COVID low. And now actually the RSI, the weekly RSI, has made a new low and is even lower than in those two lows. So this looks to me as if there's a quite good chance that this was already it, that this was already the low. But of course, as we know, we cannot look at all coins individually and make TA with all coins and disregard what Bitcoin is doing, because the altcoins, as we said many times, they follow Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin falls down and dumps, the whole market is of course following and also breaks down. So there is no chance whatsoever that XRP now continues to recover, right? That XRP recovers and even goes into a rally if Bitcoin doesn't recover. If Bitcoin continues to go into a bear market and falls to further lows, XRP, friends, will not recover and see new all-time highs. Even if they win the lawsuit, that is quite unlikely to happen. BTC has a very strong power on the whole market. Therefore, we must, of course, understand what Bitcoin is doing and will be doing. And therefore, we try to understand if this was already the Bitcoin low. Let us load the weekly chart, the moving averages, the long-term regression trend channel, the weekly RSI, and let us also load the volume bars. And we can see this dump did not quite reach the weekly moving average 200 at 21,800 and the weekly moving average 290 at 16,700, as was the case here in the COVID low, where it indeed went all the way to the weekly moving average 290 at 3,900. If this was to repeat, we would now go down to 16,700. But volume wise, we can see the volume actually doesn't look too bad, right? We have Friday now, and the volume bar, if we look at the volume bar here, we have 2.5 more days to go, and we are already at quite high levels. So we could reach volume bars that are as high as these ones here which every time marked some market bottoms and reversals, right? So we could reach these values here, and therefore the probability that this was already the bottom is actually not too low. If we bounce now, if we continue to bounce and we close the weekly candle at, I would say, at 30,500 and above, then we get some very nice chance for recovery. But even if this doesn't happen, for example, the COVID low was actually a really ugly candle close, right? This candle was really ugly. It closed below the half point of recovery, which is normally not a good thing. So if we close somewhere, I would say at 30,000 or 29,500, we should be good to go. If, of course, the weekly candle on Sunday closes at very low values, if we go down again now to, I don't know, 26,000, 27,000, something like that, and we close then I think it doesn't look good, and then we probably will go lower. But the volume is looking already pretty nice, I have to say. If we close on Sunday, we probably will be at the volume levels that we have seen every time when we had spikes, when we had this spike down, spike up, spike down, spike up, spike down. So these every time marked reversals. Therefore, the chances are not so bad that actually this has already been the bottom, even more so because now everyone is getting overly bearish, right? In a bull market, everyone is exaggeratedly bullish, like, wow, we will go to 500,000, 300,000. I mean, if you remember, there were all these plan B scenarios that no one is talking about anymore, but plan B was like, oh yeah, sure, 300,000 per Bitcoin is almost guaranteed by the end of 2021, right? And in a bear market, the exact opposite happens. Everyone is super bearish. Everyone is like, wow, we will now be in a bear market for 1 or 2 years, and we will certainly revisit the MA200 here, or we will even go to the MA290. We will go down to such values that is guaranteed. And some people even go further and they say, oh, look, Bitcoin crashed by 83-84% in 2018. Therefore, this is just repeating, right? This is now repeating, and we just go down 83-84%, and that puts us at quite insanely low values of around 11,000 or something like that, right? 11,000, 12,000, I've sometimes heard 13,000. So these are the values that are now being proclaimed. So this is exaggerated to the downside. In a bull market, everyone is exaggerating to the upside, and in the bear market, everyone is exaggerating to the downside. That is how the market psychology works. And believe me, friends, I have been there in all these crashes. Every time everybody thought we would go a lot lower. I'm not joking here. Every time everyone thought we would go much lower. And even here in 2014, 2015, though these times here were so dark, everyone back then believed that this is not the bottom and we will go down to much lower values, to $50 and even $10 were being touted as possible targets, which of course never came. So we see the sentiment is extremely bearish now, which makes me believe that this could have already been it. The volume, we said, looks pretty good. The super low weekly RSI of XRP USD is also telling the story that this could have been the bottom. Now, if we look at the weekly RSI in Bitcoin, we have not hit rock bottom yet. We are a bit higher than we could go. The historical lows in Bitcoin have been at 28.6 in January 15, at 28.76 in December 2018, at 33 in March 2020. And now we are almost as low as March 2020, not quite, at 35. So we still could go a bit lower, but I think by the weekly close, when the weekly candle closes in the red, if it probably will close in the red, I'm not sure if this will turn into a green candle by Sunday, then the weekly RSI will drop down even more, and this could actually go to as low as the COVID low of 2020. So weekly RSI wise in Bitcoin, it also looks good. So therefore it's looking not so bad, and I still have not given up the scenario, namely that this whole thing here, right, this here is a brutal correction in an Elliott wave cycle. Namely that this cycle, let me just deactivate this here. I will just deactivate everything for better visibility. Namely that this whole structure here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that this whole structure is a cycle. This thing here is one cycle. If we look at Elliott wave charts, right? This Elliott wave chart here, for example, if we look at this here, we see that the 4 wave in this 5 wave move is actually quite brutal and quite long. It is quite a long protracted move, and it actually goes down quite a lot. It goes down beyond the correction of this wave 4 in wave 3, right? And what is wave 4 in wave 3? Well, if we move in, let me just zoom in. So I think, that is my opinion. Everyone is counting Elliott waves differently. Everyone is saying, no, my wave count is the correct one. Yours is wrong. No, mine is the correct one. You are counting the waves wrong. Elliott waves are always a funny topic, which I quite enjoy because no one ever agrees on anything, but they are sometimes a quite useful tool. Like any tool, like any indicator, some indicators are sometimes really good and they work really nicely, and sometimes they just don't. Okay, sometimes they don't. For example, the RSI sometimes works nicely and sometimes suddenly it just doesn't. So these are therefore all just indicators, and we must always take them with a grain of salt. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And so this here, I would identify with wave 4 in wave 3 of the bigger cycle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this is wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of wave 3. And we have seen now, according to this Elliott wave theory, right, this Elliott wave fractal, that wave 4 actually goes below the low here, that the bigger wave 4 actually goes below the low of wave 4 in this wave 3 move, right? So what would this mean for us? This would mean, friends, that the low here, which was given here by wave 4 at 29,000, believe it or not, 29,000, this would actually be the case because we now went to 25,400. So this is a bit below this move here, okay? This is a bit below this target. So we could, in theory, still be in a continued uptrend. I still have not completely given up on this view. As long as I don't get a strong bearish invalidation, and what would be a strong bearish invalidation? For me, this would be, we would go now to the MA290. If we would visit the MA290 at 16,600, then of course we cannot talk of such a structure anymore, right? Because then we go to levels that are already quite a lot lower than this wave 4 and wave 3. So we would be already like in areas that are in wave 2 of wave 3, and that is quite a bit too low to still qualify as a continued uptrend, in my opinion. So as long as we don't go further down, and if we would now recover, right, if Bitcoin would now recover, then we still might see a new pump until the end of the year to values of a bit over 100,000, 150,000, maybe with luck, maybe with a lot of luck, 200,000. But honestly, I don't know anymore, because now Bitcoin has not reached insanely high values, right? It went to 69,000. That was the maximum, 69,000. So I'm not sure if we can reach values of 200 or 250,000 as this channel here indicates, because we have not hit the top of the channel. And if I just delete this here, then we see that we have not had a blow off top. So I'm not sure if now from here we can go in a huge move to 240,000. But if we look at this fractal here, we can see that wave 5 is a bit higher than wave 3, but not much higher, right? It's not much higher. It's not like 5 times as high or something like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And we would be a bit higher than the top of wave 3. So we would maybe be at 130,000, 140,000, 120,000. If this theory is correct, we don't know. That is the beauty about Elliott waves, friends. You don't know if they are correct until it has happened. Funny, right? But this theory is still not ruled out, and we should always think in possibilities in this market, because this market is like, I would say, a quantum mechanical market. I always like quantum mechanical comparisons because, you know, I'm a bit of a physics nerd, and I always found the paradox of Schrödinger's cat quite fascinating, namely that the cat is dead and alive at the same time. So for me, this market is a superposition of all possible futures, right? All possible futures. The future where we now go down and have a bear market, and then we have a rally after the next halving. The future that now we rebound and we go to 150 or whatever thousand, and then the cycle is over. Or the future that now we bounce and then afterwards we go down and then at some point go into a rally. We have all these possible futures, right? We have all these possible futures, and we must now try to give probabilities to them. You cannot say like, this is certain to happen. Like, this is clear that this will happen, because this market will surprise you every single time. It surprised me all the time. Every time I think I understand this market and have like learned so much that I think, now I have absolute understanding of this market. I'm pretty sure that this or that will happen. Then suddenly the market changes the rules and I'm completely humbled, and I'm thinking like, I'm like a total noob now and I'm back at square one. So this market has the capability to humble you and to teach you that you have to keep every possibility in mind and be open for all possible possibilities. You know, like here, like Doctor Strange in the Marvel movies, where he has the knowledge of all these different universes. This is a bit like crypto trading. We have the knowledge of these possible futures, and we must now in our minds assign probabilities to them. And for me, the probability that we get such a bullish continuation is actually not too low. I wouldn't say 80% now, but maybe 40 or 50%, something like that. And that of course depends, as always, on what the stock market and the dollar index will be doing. I have many times talked about the dollar index and how important the dollar index is for Bitcoin. The dollar index is reaching values here that it has not seen since, get this, 2002. Friends, since 2002. We can see that the monthly RSI is now at values that it hasn't seen since many years, since January 2015, since November 2000, since January 85. So the monthly RSI in the dollar index seldomly reaches such high values. And if we go into the weekly chart, if we now go into the weekly, look at how insanely overextended the weekly RSI is. Look at this. Let me zoom out. The weekly RSI has now reached 81. Only a few times in history has it been higher. In 2015, in 97, in 85, in 81, in 75, and in 71. And what happened every time when we had those valuations? What happened every time? Let us go there. Dump. Here was an interesting exception, but we had an intermediate correction. We had an intermediate correction that went from September 81 until December 81, which is still 1 year, friends. Let's not forget that even in this bull cycle of the dollar, we had an intermediate correction that lasted for 1 year. And then we reached the top here, and then of course that is the obvious dump, right? Then afterwards here, we also had a dump. It continued for a while, but it actually then crashed down to quite low values again in this whole bull cycle. So the dollar does do corrections, and here the same. It corrected, it went sideways for a while, but then it ended up quite a lot lower. So the dollar index does do corrections, and the weekly RSI now is so high that a brutal correction, and I'm talking really a strong correction, is just a matter of time. And what kind of a strong correction can we expect? Let's look at this entire move here. Let's look at this entire move, right? How low did it go? Well, it went back to the 0.382, to the 0.382 Fibonacci retracement. If this was to repeat, if we take this whole move here, and let's say the dollar index pumps a bit more now to 110 or something, let's say 109, yeah, I don't know, let's say 110 now, right? It would come back to the 0.382. So if it continues pumping now for a few more weeks until 109, it would still come back down to the 0.382, which is at 97, okay? So this is quite insane. The dollar index has pumped for such a long time that it will come back in some form or another, probably to at least the 0.5, if not the 0.382. Let's go back further in time. Right? How much did the dollar retrace in previous moves? Let's take this uptrend here, for example, right? If we take this uptrend here, we see the dollar index actually retraced even below the 0.382. The 0.382 here, it ended up holding, but a few times it went even below the 0.382 Fibonacci retracement in October 1998. So at some point, friends, it is absolutely clear that the dollar index will correct, and the correction will be brutal. This thing cannot continue pumping like it did for now over a year without correction. It just cannot continue going on like this and goes on and goes on and goes on. This is not how markets work. Markets always come down, especially if you have such an overextended RSI like in the dollar index. So it's only a matter of time until the correction begins. And when this correction begins, I am quite sure that Bitcoin will start going up like crazy. Let us take a look at the Nasdaq, because we said, sure, Bitcoin is anti-correlated to the dollar index, but positively correlated to the Nasdaq, right? So if we look at the Nasdaq is rebounding nicely. It has reached insanely low values. Look at this. It went down to 11,600. So this correction here, if we take the magnitude of this correction, we are looking at a 30% correction. The COVID low was also 30% correction. The 2018 correction was a 23% correction, right? Okay, yeah, 2008 was of course more aggressive, that is clear. But even so, even if you say, okay, we are now here and we have a 2008 repeat, right? It still didn't go down in a straight line. It still rebounded before plunging down further. So I would assume that even if you say that this is the beginning of a huge crash, which I'm not sure about, honestly, I'm not sure, because if too many people expect a crash, and from what I hear, everybody is talking now about a huge stock market crash. If too many people expect a stock market crash, I don't think it will come. If nobody expects it and everybody's super euphoric, then I think the probability for a crash is a lot higher. But okay, let's still say we are now entering a huge bear market. I still think this thing will retrace and then we go down further. So the probability is quite high that Bitcoin will at least rebound before going lower. So in such a scenario, Bitcoin would rebound and then retest the MA 290, then be in a bear market for quite a while until in 2024 we have the next halving, and at the latest then we would go into the next rally. But as I said, if the dollar index starts dropping sooner than many people expect, I don't know, next week, in 2 weeks or something like that, then the probability is extremely high, friends, that this was indeed the low. As I said, the volume looks good. The RSI is super oversold for Bitcoin, for XRP, and probably for many other altcoins. So it could really be that we will recover now and we could have this structure that I was talking about and get a final wave 5 to about 140,000. That is what I'm hoping for. Friends, as always, I'm not a financial advisor, so please keep in mind, I could be wrong. I was wrong before. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. I'm just putting out my ideas there because too many people are now bearish and talking about bear market. And this would be a bit too simple. I have the feeling that the market, the only thing that is true for the market is that it always does the opposite of what most people think. And if most people now think we are entering a huge bear market, then I am not so sure about it. Going back to XRP, we see that the XRP BTC chart is also quite nice because actually if we have this trend line here, we can see that XRP BTC is printing a quite nice falling wedge. And what do we know about falling wedges, friends? What do we know about them? Of course, they are bullish structures. So this thing will probably break to the upside. And how long is it going? Of course, until the end of the year. And what is at the end of the year? The probable, very likely ending of this stupid lawsuit that has been dragging on. So I assume that at some point later this year, XRP will finally start the breakout that it has been postponing for a long while now, a very long while. And we can even drag this thing on further, this falling wedge. And then we actually get a huge mega falling wedge where we have, okay, this anomaly, we all know why this anomaly happened, so it doesn't really count. But if you just look at this structure, it has been in a falling wedge since early 2018. And how beautiful would it be if at the end of the year, this whole crazy falling wedge structure breaks to the upside. And I think the probability is not so low. So going back to the XRP USD chart, the probability is not so low that this actually is already it, and that we won't even revisit 15 cents. We won't even go down to such lows again as has happened with Bitcoin, because let us just remember one last time that Bitcoin was actually doing something very, very similar in 2020, and that XRP is just repeating this pattern as it seems. And quite likely this whole structure here, we said in the XRP USD chart, is pointing towards a breakout by the end of the year. And the XRP BTC chart is also pointing to a breakout by the end of the year. And if Bitcoin now continues with this wave 5 structure that I personally still see as a possibility, right? If this happens and this whole thing here was just an expanded flat like A, B, C type correction in a wave 4, in an Elliott wave 4, right? Let us draw it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is just an expanded flat correction in this wave 4. If this is turning out to be true, friends, then we could still be in the game. This thing could still be on. But of course, I would not bet everything on it. So if the dollar index continues pumping like a crazy maniac, we can be quite sure that this will be not good for Bitcoin and that Bitcoin will fall back lower. So if the dollar index goes now to 110, 120, I think we will have a hard time with the crypto market of rebounding and seeing higher highs by the end of this year. In that case, I think a bear market or some kind of bear market is likely, and we might get a new rally at some point in 2023 or 2024 at the latest. So this is my picture now for XRP and for BTC. I think it is quite likely that this has actually already been the low, and we can draw it here, right? That this has actually been the low, and that we now rebound and then retest this resistance at some point. We go lower again, and then some point we start breaking out. And this will be insane, because remember, friends, how rallies work. They always occur when no one is believing in them anymore. When no one believes that this can happen, when everyone has given up psychologically, when everyone is saying XRP is dead, this coin is such a bad performer, this rally, that it will never pump again. If that happens and everyone has given up, then the rally comes. Why? Because that's how psychology works. And let me tell you again, friends, from my own experience, here, I can tell you in 2014, 2015, the mood was so insanely bad. Everyone was saying Bitcoin is dead. Like, I'm not joking. Everyone was saying Bitcoin is over. It's done. It will never recover. It will never see new all-time highs. And this is exactly when the new rally started, and we went straight down from 160 to 20,000. This is how this market works. It's crazy, but when no one believes that such a thing is possible, when no one believes this is when it happens. And when everyone believes something, it will not happen. This is the psychology of the markets. I hope you found this interesting. I am still kind of optimistic that this could have been the low. I will keep an eye out on the market, how the dollar index develops, how the Nasdaq is developing, how the stock market in general will develop. And we still could see new all-time highs if we are lucky and the dollar index starts stumping now. We could be lucky and this could have been the low, and we could go straight up to new all-time highs from here towards the end of the year or early next year. It is still possible. Now, is it super likely? Probably not, maybe 40-50%. But we should not neglect this idea just because it's a bit of a far out idea. In reality, nobody knows what will happen, and we should be Dr. Strange, and we should have all future quantum realities in our minds simultaneously, and they float around and we see all those probabilities, and we should be prepared mentally for every single one of those futures. And with that, friends, I would like to end this video. Thank you a lot for watching. I hope you found this informative or entertaining. If you did so, please leave a like. That would help the channel a lot, and maybe even subscribe to this channel, because I will now make regular update videos in these dark times. I have been sent back by the Valar because my mission is not yet accomplished, friends. In these dark times, I want to shed some light on the craziness of this market and make regular update videos. Thanks again for watching, friends. Have a nice day and see you in the next video.